the Victorians had a whole load of things wrong, but one thing that they did do well was specialist tools for specialist jobs.
Mm-hmm.
They took it too far. I don't know whether we really needed 8 forks and knives on a table.
My mother thought so. Welcome to Season 2 of the Knife Wife podcast. I'm Suz, here with my husband,
Bob Terzuola.
We're professional creatives and entrepreneurs who live, love, and work together. We share our stories to find ourselves in others. P.S. This podcast has little to do with knives. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Knife Wife podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm here with my partner in crime.
That's me, Bob, right here.
Yep. Some people say, hey, bear, that I know. And if you know the hey, bear, or hello, folks, make a comment. We're back in the studio, back from Italy. And we are changing a few things up about the podcast. One is it will be released once a week for probably the next season because of Susie has to have a few little surgeries. Not little. And then we will also have sort of morphed into makers, creatives, entrepreneurs. I was just explaining to our guest today that I'm having a hard time getting couples on. It seems like one of the couples is always shy and doesn't want to be on the podcast. And they say, yes, we'll be on your podcast. And then they disappear. And that's because one is shy. And what's funny is I know a lot of these people. I'm like, really? I didn't know you were that shy. Anyway, so I guess they're nervous it's going to be like Oprah or something, and I'm going to dig deep into their lives, which I don't want to do. I just want funny stories. And our guest today, we've had some funny stories together. Anyway, so once a week, we're going to go to once a week soon. And what can I say? It's a big day for me today.
Today is her birthday.
It is.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I was greeted by everybody saying happy birthday at the studio today, and that felt really good.
Mm-hmm.
This is such a great place. I love coming here. A Different Day Radio, it's called. Anyway, so today we have someone who is close to my heart.
And mine.
In many, many ways. I've known her for a long time. We've had some taxidermy adventures together. We've had some suck and see restaurants together. And let us introduce Grace Horne, all the way from the UK, from Sheffield, England. Say hello, Grace.
Hi. It's so nice to hear from you. So nice to speak to you.
Nice to speak to you.
Hi, Grace.
Hi.
Grace is a scissor maker, and I just happen to like scissors. I counted the ones just in my studio alone. I have 4 pairs of Grace's custom scissors.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm the largest collector still. Probably not.
You might
anymore.
well be.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I'm due for another pair. But, what is my excuse? Why do I need another pair? I don't know. Why does anybody collect anything? Because I do. And I saw some at the Blade Show last year that, I just didn't get there in time that I really could have taken. Anyway, so I have those in my studio, and I counted 24 pairs just alone in the studio, which I feel is, do I use them all? No. Do I like things that are things? That means I have scissors that, Grace probably knows these, the old crane scissors they look like a bird. And that's when I began to love scissors. And when I worked in the movies, I always carried a pair of those to cut little threads and stuff off actors' clothes. And then I started collecting other pairs. And anytime I see something, most of them are factory made. They're not custom made. I'm glad I only know Grace as a custom scissor maker because I could be in real trouble. In the knife world, there's thousands of them.
Welcome to the dark side of scissors.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh well, that I like. Anyway.
Speaking of that, Grace, let me ask you: how many other scissor makers are there that we would know about, or custom handmade?
Handmade. People who make scissors from scratch.
Yeah.
From scratch,
There's
yes.
probably only a few of us around. I know that there are a couple still working in France who make scissors from raw material completely on their own.
Yeah.
There are not many of us around.
Okay,
I'm
well,
hoping to change that, but
you are, and you're teaching, and we'll talk about that later. But both Bob and I, Bob said, I wouldn't have any idea how to make scissors. I said, well, I've been watching Grace for so long, I have some idea of how to make scissors, but I've never made a pair of scissors, and would love next time you come to be able, we were going to Italy this year, so we just didn't have any big trips. But next time you're coming to the U.S., Bob said, well, we'll just get her in the shop. She can make a knife with me, and we'll make scissors. I'm like, I don't know.
no, that sounds like an excellent plan to me.
Okay, all right. All right, we'll
I'd
talk
love
about
to
it
make
later.
a knife with you. Love to make a knife with Grace.
Yes. Anyway, Grace, what people, I don't know if they know, I've known you for so long, I have to make sure I check the boxes of what other people don't know about you. One is, I believe you have quite a degree in metallurgy. Tell us how that came about.
Well, I think if you look back at what I've been doing, it looks like it was a carefully planned career choice, and it wasn't.
I know how that goes.
Me too.
It was entirely lurching from one thing to another. It's just a series of happy accidents, really. And I started really my career 30 odd years ago when I moved up to Sheffield to become a knife maker's apprentice. I'd done my degree. I'd done a set of slip joint folding knives for my final project because I really liked working in metal, but jewellery was a little bit too frivolous for me, and I liked working on the engineering machines, on the lathes and on the milling machines and that sort of thing. And really thinking about knives, pocket knives, as being pocket jewellery really appealed to me. And I love the changing state of them. I love the fact that even with the best will in the world, the majority of the time your knife is going to be in its folded state, in your pocket or in your bag or what have you. And it's only on the occasions that you're using it that it's going to come out and the blade's going to be open. And it's in this changing state of being open and shut, I think is quite fascinating. Fixed blade knives never appealed to me. I always started with folding knives.
Interesting, because most people start with fixed blades because the engineering of a folding knife is, well, Bob's taught many who've been making fixed blades for years, and they're like, oh, we still don't quite get this. And if I hadn't taped his A Sharp Life, now I really, after watching all the raw footage, I really know how to, I'm not doing it because, if I were to grind a blade, he'd have me locked in the shop. So I purposely have avoided that.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't it's a slippery slope.
Anyway, so then you went and got a degree in metallurgy, right? And your higher degree?
Not quite. When I moved up to Sheffield, I didn't get, I came up to work with Stan Shaw, who was one of the last Little Mesters in Sheffield. And I kind of camped on his doorstep. And he said he was too old to take on an apprentice. So that kind of stumped me for a bit. But he sent me away with a whole load of springs and blades and told me to figure it out myself because it wasn't that hard. In a typical Sheffield understatement. And to be fair, he always was there if I wanted to kind of run something by him, or he was there, but he wasn't prepared to take on an apprentice. But I realised that Sheffield Hallam University was running a master's programme, and it was a 2 years master's programme, full time or 4 years part time. And at the time, which you have to bear in mind was like 27 years ago, it was cheaper for me to do the course and use than it was to set up my own workshop. So I could go in, I took the active decision to do it part-time so I could do my studies part-time and use all their equipment for free for the rest of the week. And that was really interesting. And despite the fact that it was in metalwork and jewellery, they didn't mind me doing knives and edge tools. So that was all I did for my master's. Come to the end of my master's, looking around, what shall I do? Got caught in the corridor by one of the academics who said, have you ever thought of doing a PhD? And I kind of went, no. And he said, well, if you did think about doing a PhD, what would you do it in? And I'd just seen a lecture by an Australian called Ian Ferguson, who'd done work on mokume. And he was a vessel maker, and he'd been incorporating iron layers in his mokume. And I thought, that's fascinating. My first question was, had he tried anything that could be heat treated? And he hadn't. It wasn't any of interest to him, so that was fine. So I said to the academic, oh well, that's what I'd be interested in, whether I could use his techniques, because he was using solid state diffusion bonding, and he was using a special kiln that he'd had made down in Oxford. So, can I do that for making non-traditional Damascus steel? The title of the project was Solid State Diffusion Bonded Damascus Steel and its role within custom contemporary knife making, or something like that. Basically,
that sounds like a dissertation waiting to happen. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd laugh a minute, I tell you, laugh a minute. And I was basically laminating pure silver and steel together and then heat treating it. And it was, most of my life has been punctuated by episodes of optimism over reality. And that was
you too?
Yeah, I know, that's why we get on so well.
Yeah, if somebody says, well, you can't do that, I'm like, oh yeah? No, that's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So it was a practice-based PhD that I did, doctorate that I did. So I had to present a body of work as well as a written thesis. And every time I complained to the metallurgy department that things weren't working, they'd kind of throw their hands up and go, I'm surprised it's going as well as it is. I kind of like, thank you.
Yeah, thanks you for your support.
Yep. So my two fundamental questions was, can I do it and is it worth it? And yes, you can do it, and no, it's not worth it.
I love that. So many things we do in our lives, when we get to the end of it, they're not worth doing anymore. But
having said that, I loved doing my PhD, and I know that a lot of people who were my cohorts struggled. Practice-based PhDs are notoriously hard for creative people because you end up using your own creative output, normally as sketchbooks, as a source material to reflect upon as research. So you end up tying yourself in knots because it's so self-referential, and you know that you're going to be examining your sketchbooks later on with your research hat on. So you don't produce any work because is it worthy to be reflected on by a researcher later?
That's a conundrum.
So that can be really hard for a lot of people. I loved it. And I thought that, it's really given me, and I've realized how much I love research, and how much I love documenting stuff.
Yes, you're very good at that.
It's given me a good grounding to kind of take my sketchbooks forward, and yeah.
Yeah, I've saved all my sketchbooks. I don't know if you know this, but years ago, my daughter had said, Mom, I'd really like you to keep your sketchbooks because I've seen so many of your ideas, even a rough, quick sketch. Not a finished sketch like many people have sketchbooks that are pieces of art. This was just, rough things, notes, whatever. She said, because I've seen so many of those things turn into pieces of art. She said, and so that's fascinating to me. Well, I don't know if it is anymore.
I find it fascinating to go back and look at the sketchbooks that I did 30 years ago. Appallingly. They're not good sketchbooks. These aren't works of art. They were for my benefit, nobody else. I'd look back and I think that's a theme that I'm still interested in now. I can track. When you start, you've got, 50 things you're interested in, and then it gets whittled down. Well, actually, you get more stuff as well, don't you? It never decreases. That's a total fallacy.
I'm glad you said that, because I have so many things that I'm looking at the clock going, I don't know if I'm going to get to that. But so many things interest me. And of course, you and I share the more bizarre, the more interesting I find them. So,
Yeah.
or the more difficult, let's start a
Yeah.
podcast at 68. Oh, sure. Let's do that. Anyway, I want you to, so you get your PhD, and then I want you to share with us your studio, because I love the story of your studio. It's unique.
It is unique. Yeah. So for a while, having spent quite a lot of time working in university workshops, and they've always been very supportive about me doing that. And I had a little workshop at home. I finally, 15 years ago, found a little building just down the road from me.
Building?
Yeah. Well, I say building. It had walls but no roof.
Oh, you have to start somewhere, Grace.
You do, yeah. It's an old public toilet, and it's tiny. The back bit of it is just 9 foot by 9 foot. I do have 2 floors, and it's beautiful. It was built for the tram drivers in 1905 as an all-male toilet, and it still has glazed brick on the inside and quarry tile floors and dressed stone, and in typical Victorian over-engineering, it's just beautiful.
It is. I've seen the pictures. It is. Anyone check out Grace's Instagram at Grace Horne, your Grace Horne Designs. Is that it?
Yeah.
It's the most interesting studio I've ever seen. So how many toilets were there to start with, and how many are there now?
There was just the one toilet cubicle and 3 urinal bays to start with. By the time I got there, the urinal bays had been knocked down. That's okay.
You don't need them.
I didn't keep them. Now there is just one toilet, not in the original place. It's moved. I have to say that having such a small workshop does mean that I have to be very selective about the machinery that I buy. I'm always looking for space-saving equipment, and but I have an amazing range of stuff. I've just bought myself
Tell us.
I can't believe it. It's so exciting. So I've just bought a Bergmaster.
We saw
turret
pictures
drill
of
press.
it.
Isn't it so sweet?
Yes, Bob has 2, and when I came in his shop, I wrote this to you, but when I came in his shop the first time, I had never seen a turret drill press like those. I said, "What are these?" And he showed me how it worked. That was pretty sexy to me. I don't know. You are the same way.
So it's so ingenious. It's lovely, and they're really rare over here. They're not something that you see very often. And I was actually contemplating getting one over in the States and getting it shipped over. So this one is definitely cheaper and more available than that. But fingers crossed. I think it needs a little bit of work doing on it. Certainly the electrics need updating, and then I can't wait. So I've had a pillar drill in my workshop since I kind of set it up, and it was a freebie. The husband of a friend of my mother's kind of said he was getting rid of it. Was I interested in it? And at the time I said yes, even though I knew that it was a hobbyist's drill and it was a little bit shaky, and I thought, well, if it keeps going for a few years, I'll then replace it. And it just hasn't died. So
the older machine, they don't die. The new ones die, but the older ones, no.
It's not great. It is rattly. It's got quite a lot of wear on it, but still, it's done me. It's done me well over the years. So I think it's due for retirement.
Grace, the model that you've got, we saw the pictures online. They stopped making those in the late 50s.
Really?
Yeah. So you've got a drill press that's, 80 years old or something like that. It's 70 years old. Just make sure you keep lots of oil in it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little oil fill on one side.
Window.
You got the window, and on the side, there's a set screw that you unscrew, and it's actually a tapered set screw.
Okay.
You'll see it. It's between two of the
heads.
the chucks, the two chucks.
Yeah.
And you just unscrew that with a hex wrench, and that's how you fill it. And I think it's up at about the 1 or 2 o'clock position when the window is down where you can read through it. And
Okay.
just keep...
Well, if I have any problems, I'll drop you a message.
Yes, please do, because the one thing you do need to do, and I talked to a guy who actually worked at the Bergmaster company, and then when they stopped making those parts, he retired and he bought all of the parts, and he was the only source for new gears and new seals and so forth. And his name was Mr. Henry. He was in Los Angeles. And he said the one thing you really want to make sure is that you have plenty of oil in that case.
Right.
You can overfill it. That's okay. He said, but don't let it run dry or anything, and it will leak. It'll leak probably right around this. So what I do is I get a heavy paper towel, and I make like a diaper that goes under the seal, and I hold it with Velcro. Mm-hmm. And it just gets soaked every, couple of months, and I just throw it away and just add more oil.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Did you ever take one of those apart, Bob?
Yes, I did.
I thought so. When I first met you, you had like the schematics of it, and you were, I don't know why you took it apart.
That was one of the great mistakes of my life. The inside work, well, I wanted to change the gears, and I wanted to change the speed of some of the spindles. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I decided
you had to bob-eyes it.
I had to bob-eyes it, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you a cute little story. I don't know if you know Kit Carson. Kit Carson was a folder maker, passed away a couple of years ago, very advanced, lovely guy. There was a Bergmaster on eBay, and I was bidding on it, and somebody was bidding against me. And I waited till the last 2 seconds, and I put in another bid, and I got it. And about a minute and a half later, I got a phone call from Kit Carson saying, "You son of a bee." He said, I could have used that machine for parts.
Yeah, well, there's quite a few people that have them. I saw that Lucas has one, Michael Birch has one. And so there's such a beautiful piece of machinery. I thought, when I'm recovering from surgery number 1, I'm going to sit and make a nice drawing, and either I'll do a print or do something that I can turn into a pattern or shirts, and I wouldn't put it on the front of the shirt. I don't like stuff on the front of the shirt. And for the club of all the people that have them,
For people who don't know what we're talking about, it's basically a drill press that has a 6-position turret, and when you push the handle back, the turret revolves to the next spindle, the next chuck, holding a different drill or a different tap or something. And you can it just keeps turning around. Just push the handle back, it turns, pull the handle down, and you drilled your hole.
Yes, and it has like a little brake stop you hear when you do that. But anyway, enough about drill presses. But that was, we were so excited to see you have one.
Can we just keep talking about drill presses? I think this is fascinating.
We could, I know. But this is a podcast, and other people may be listening. I don't know. Crazy of me. But anyway.
Non-drill press people.
So, Bob, you had a question about Grace's progression to scissors. You want to ask that question?
Yeah. What fascinated you so much about scissors that you decided you wanted to actually make them? I mean, I'm fascinated by Porsches and Mercedes-Benz, but there's no way I would want to try to make one.
Well, it was because I was making slip joints, and I realized that on a knife that I owned, I used the scissors a lot, and it was just a Swiss Army knife. Mm-hmm. Right. And I made one with a pair of scissors, and it worked okay, but not great. But I didn't know what was wrong with it and how I could correct it. And when I looked online, I realized that there wasn't anything there, that was so poorly documented that they're really, unlike knives, where there's a plethora of sources of information now. On scissors, there was none. And this was 14 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And at the time, there was a company in Sheffield called Ernest Wrights, and they were owned by the grandson of the original owner. His name was Nick. And there was only 3 old guys working there. And they were all in the mid-60s, late 60s. And I made a nuisance of myself and persuaded them to teach me how to make scissors. And they're using drop-forged scissor blanks. And they were doing them in small batches. And it really felt like it was the end of the craft. You know, when these three guys go, it felt like the company was just keeping going until these three old guys died or retired.
Yeah.
And once that had happened, it hadn't been documented properly, that it would just die out. So I went down, worked with them for about 9 months, and I only wanted to make the little ones to go into my knives, but they weren't prepared to let me do that. They wanted me to make all of the sizes, which was great. And just tracking back a little bit, it turns out that it wasn't the end of this. That actually, Ernest writes, is a success story. It didn't stop with them. Nick died, and Paul, a new owner, took over, and now they have. He put a lot of money in the company, and they've updated a whole load of machinery, and then now the scissors that they're making now are better than they ever have done. I think the quality is there, the training is there. They have 6 or 8 young people working there, so it wasn't the end. It felt like it could have been, but it wasn't. And then when I left them, the first thing I did was have a look at the processes that they did and realized that there was no way that I could do that in my workshop. They were using specialist grinding machinery that wasn't available anywhere else. The scissor-making machines that they use, which are to put the curve and the twist on the inside of the blades, actually are Italian, and they're from the 1970s, was the latest that they were made. They're not made anymore. There's very few of them still in Italy. So if it was something that I was wanting to do, I was going to have to find a way of looking at applying the techniques and figuring out how I could do them in my own workshop. And I went back to research. So I went and went down to the library and started reading through books that described how scissor making was done prior to the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
And there was some hints and very little explicit descriptions, but enough for me to piece together a process that means that I can make scissors in my knife making workshop without any specialist equipment. And that's what I teach on my courses. So the idea is that it is then more feasible for other people to have a go.
Okay, well, I wondered, and I think I have a pair of Wright scissors, sewing scissors, that I've had since, I don't know, almost 50 years in my studio that I don't use. They were for fabric, I believe, and I'm not really cutting much fabric these days, so I was at one time, but not now. And so that's interesting. I think that you're such a small niche of, craft people, of makers, that everyone, wonders. When I first met you, I think at Blade Show, I was there to buy your scissors immediately, but that was not the case. Now things have changed, and you've really made a name for yourself, which I'm really impressed with. You stuck by it, and because people who don't know Grace, she can do many things, not just make scissors, but it's not just, but she can sew. She makes corsets.
I'm
makes
easily
shoes.
distracted.
Yes. She makes incredible looking cakes and dinners and whatever. She just can do it all.
She's a Renaissance lady.
She is. And I respect that. Anyway, so now you are severely, wanted. People want your scissors. I don't know if you do. Are you selling them by lottery now at your table, or how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm having to. Otherwise, the first come first serve. I still want some on the table, first come first serve. But certainly at Blade Show, where we have that staggered entry, I just think it's nice to have some that are available later on in the day.
Yeah, Bob feels the same way. Way. He wants them first come, first serve to the people who do come first, but he also, for the people who don't, for the average ticket payer, He wants that too. So I really respect that. So here's a question. What makes a good pair of scissors in your mind? If you were to go buy someone's scissors, what are you looking for?
Well, I think it has to fit your end use. So that, if a pair of good hairdressing scissors aren't necessarily a good pair of fabric cutting scissors.
That's for sure.
Considering what you're intending to use them for is really important. The action is fundamental. So, and I would start with also thinking about your hand size, that if you've got big fingers or if you've got small hands, then some scissors are going to feel more comfortable to you than others. And then, the cutting action. You want a nice, smooth, clean cut from the pivot to the tip. Some scissors have very fine tips. So traditionally, embroidery scissors have incredibly delicate tips so that you can get right up close to the fabric. But that means that they're not robust to do
anything else.
Thicken, so that's what I mean about kind of thinking about what your end use is going to be. I love the fact these are tools that we use all the time. I just love the idea of everyday tools being now elevated to something that's a little bit more decorative and unusual. The Victorians had a whole load of things wrong, but one thing that they did do well was specialist tools for specialist jobs.
You're right.
They took it too far. I don't know whether we really needed 8 forks and knives on a table at
My
once.
mother thought so. That's how I was raised. And you measured the end of the table to where they started, and certain ones went up 1 inch or 2 inches, some went up 3 inches, and things were in front of your plate, and I had to learn all that. She was all about that. I think it was a little over the top, but I agree. But you also have been, researching scissors. Lately, you've been posting pictures. I think they're French Victorian era scissors that I've been looking at. And so are you writing a book? Are you doing?
Well, this year, I've got myself a research assistant. So that has made a massive difference because we've been able to process a whole load more information. There's a lot of undocumented information within the Sheffield museums that are just in boxes. They haven't been listed or documented or anything like this. This is primary source material that nobody else has looked at. So getting that out, having a look at it, sorting through that sort of thing is really important. Now we're hoping that by this time next year, we'll have an online scissor resource so that people can access patents. So we'll have scissor patents on there from 1850 to 1950, starting with the UK ones and then looking at the US ones. So you'll be able to search by patent number and also by description. So sometimes, very often people send me pictures of scissors and go, what were these for? Do you know anything about these scissors or the makers or anything like that? And hopefully by kind of getting a patent database together, we'll be able to kind of sort through that a little bit easier. And also makers. So there's quite a lot of entwined family makers, particularly in Sheffield. And luckily, Liz is my research assistant. She's come through social history. So she's actually very interested in the people and their relationship to each other, whereas I'm much more interested in the artifact. So the two of us complement each other really well.
Wonderful. So this will be online. Will it will be called All You Ever Wanted to Know About Scissors, but we're afraid to ask or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything you want to know about scissors, but we're afraid to ask.
Well, the one thing about scissors,
that's a good title. Yes.
Buying scissors in America, I don't know if this is true in the UK, you can't try them. They're in these cases, so you can never pick them up and then try to cut something with them. So you're blind when you're just like, well, they look nice. I don't know if they work nice.
I know. And also the weighting of them. So sometimes they can be very blade heavy.
Yeah.
And then they're not nice to use.
No.
I had an interesting job that I did a couple of weeks ago for a hairdresser. Did you see it?
Yes. Oh,
For a
I did,
hairdresser
but
with no
not everybody
fingers.
knows that, with no fingers. That's an amazing story. Tell us that story.
So I was approached just before Blade Show last year by an American woman who sells scissors, and one of her clients was a hairdresser, and she'd been involved in a domestic violence accident where her husband, her partner, had shot the fingers off her right hand. She'd got a shotgun blast in her shoulder, in her left shoulder, I think, but she'd reached her hand up to push the gun away, and she lost the fingers, all her fingers on her right hand.
Did anyone shoot him?
I think he died in the end. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, proceed.
I think this is a nicely rounded out story. I think that ended there. But she's wanted to get back into hairdressing, and one of the things that I was asked to do was to find a way that she could use. We could modify a pair of hairdressing scissors so that she could strap it onto her hand rather than hold it in her fingers. So. Yeah, that's an exciting thing to do. That's a nice thing to do.
Yes, and you did like Velcro. You used some Velcro that wrapped around her hand, and so the scissors didn't have the two, what do you call them, holes, but
finger bows.
Finger bows. It just had one finger bow, right?
Yeah, so it had the thumb bow which pivoted, which was really nice for her, and then it had a cradle for the palm of her hand, and then Velcro around the back.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Brilliant. So good job. Bob's done some things like this in his life. And
I think it'll be an ongoing thing because it's not something that you get right straight away. I think this will require feedback and,
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Grace. If you were to pick out or identify either one pair of scissors or a style or a type of scissors that you think would be the epitome of scissor-making craft, either from an individual or something, where would you go? Would it be a country, like Solingen, Germany, or Sheffield, or would it be a person? How would you find like the best, museum piece?
You cannot do that. That is such a mean thing to do. That's so mean. Okay.
Nobody's called me mean before.
Okay, well, I have.
Right. Instead, I'm going to tell you about my favorite ones. Not necessarily the pinnacle. These are scissors from the kind of 1700s, and you have scissors being produced in Spain, in Albacete, and they were only really the center of cutlery industry for a relatively short period of time in Spain, but they did some really beautiful ornate scissors. And one of the reasons why I love them as a researcher is they're quite distinctive, and they also very often have etched on the blade, made in the eyes of God, and then they give me a date.
Wow.
So from a researcher's point of view, to have a date on a pair of scissors
Bingo.
is gold. And they have a very interesting aesthetic device where normally scissors finish at the finger bows. You have everything from the finger bows forward. Well, on the Spanish ones, they have this decorative element behind the finger bows, and that's really to help balance out the weight of the blades at the front.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. So that's pretty cool. But as a kind of balance to that, at the same time, we have calligraphy scissors from Persia, and they're, as I said, kind of contemporaneous but very separate. They were also being used by scribes So still paper scissors, but instead of having these really heavy blades and the counterbalance behind the finger bows, they have incredibly hollow ground blades. So the weight is much lighter. So these are like different solutions to the same problems. And then they have these strange nesting finger bows. So they kind of go one behind each other instead of side by side. So again, very distinctive aesthetics, which, I just love those two.
And function, form and function. I
Yes.
mean, the two things together.
Yeah.
So what is going to happen in your scissor making this year? Are there anything new that you're making that are something different besides, everything you always want to know about scissors, but we're afraid to ask, your website?
Can I use that as a tagline? I think that's great. Yeah.
Please. I'm full of them. Grace, I wake up, they come out of me. People have taglines. They just don't know it. I think them in my head. So please, anytime I can help.
So my next project is a replica of a First World War surgical tin. So this is a little tin that I've got, a friend of mine owns actually, and it's 3 inches by 2 inches, and it's just a little tin, and it has a full medical field kit in it. It's got a Spencer Wells forceps, needles, suture on the lid side, and then in the body it's got a pair of scissors, folding scalpel with 2 blades. It's got tweezers. It's got a bullet probe, abscess lance, abscess drainer, and they are all completely disassemblable for sterilization. So, I mean, I started looking at it because I liked the scissors that you could take apart and sterilize. And then I just thought, I'm just going to have to make the entire kit.
As you would.
You would. So that is my job for this year. That's my big project for this year.
And it's 2 inches by 3 inches, the tin?
Yep.
So we're talking minute. And you did make some scissors for a necklace, little tiny scissors years ago, right?
I did.
You did.
So I've made ridiculously tiny scissors. That was an accident.
Well, sort of.
These mad. Does it sound familiar?
They started out big, and then you kept making mistakes, and it got smaller and smaller.
That's what Bob does with his knives.
Well, I made a big pair that was 12 inches long. And it was beautiful. They were based off a lot of my pieces are either kind of modern interpretations of historical pieces or kind of even closer reproductions or entire designs, fresh designs by me. So really, it depends what's inspired me. But this one was a kind of my interpretation of this original piece from India. And I really liked it. It was carved, and I was actually very fond of it. But I realized that I never have any scissors of my own scissors. I don't own a pair of my own scissors. It just never happens.
Just like Bob with his knives. Someone tried to buy a knife out of his pocket in Italy, and he priced it so high this time. He's getting smart that nobody bought it. And so he still gets to carry it. But I understand. People say, well, how many prints do you have left? Well, really, I'm a whore. I sold them all. Anyway, I don't have a lot left. So
I decided that what I wanted to do was make a reproduction of this big piece, but just make it small enough so that I could wear it as a necklace, as a pendant. And I made it out of Damascus and gold. And it was, an inch and a half tall, maybe not even that much. Wow. But it basically fitted in the finger bows of the big pair. So that was
cool.
It was a replica of the big pair that fitted in the finger bows of the of them.
That's cool.
And if you want to know how Grace Horne's mind works, that's exactly the perfect example of it.
Yeah, perfect idea.
And one of the things that we do, because I was carving it under the microscope, and as I was carving it, it felt really small. And one of the things that one of my teachers, one of my mentors had taught me is that if you're struggling with something as small as that, the solution is to go smaller and to do a throwaway project that is even smaller than that. And then when you come back to do the project that you're working on, it feels like a manageable size. So I started making tiny scissors and then thought, I wonder whether I could make a pair of scissors, again, a replica of those that now fits in the finger bows of the small one that I've got. Yeah. So they ended up being 1/4 of an inch long, something like that.
I saw
really
pictures
tiny.
of them, right? You had pictures of them. They were mind-blowing. And a friend of ours, actually the man who introduced us, is a miniaturist. He's a miniature sculptor. And I remember sending them to him and saying, you got competition here, sir.
I think that now I've done them, I can say that I don't need to do them again. I think that's
one
fine.
of those things, yep.
Yeah. But they were heat treated and they did cut a hair. It was important to me that they were heat treated and they worked, yeah.
Okay. All right.
They weren't out of Damascus. I'd just like to say those tiny ones were out of stainless.
Well, you have to have some accommodations when you're going to, minute microscopic work. So, do we have any more questions? I think we're about out of time. I could talk to her forever. Grace, you're a wealth of knowledge. You're have a great sense of humor. I just want to know, have you been to any taxidermy shops lately?
No, I haven't. Though I have. The last time I did taxidermy, I did a mouse. So I made a mouse, and I put a magnet in its stomach so I could attach it to random steel objects around the house. And I'd forgotten about this. And I
want one.
And I had a guest, and I found the mouse, and then I took great delight in moving this magnetic mouse around the house.
Oh my gosh! Oh, I love it. Yes, I tried to find a taxidermy somewhere in California or near us, and I couldn't find anyone. I have lots of birds. In fact, you made a bird. It's an English bird, though.
I made a jay. The jay was lovely to do. I'd do a bird again. I don't know whether I'd do a mouse again.
Yeah. Well, yesterday I had a mouse that was stuck in the 1/4-inch wire in the chicken coop, and it had been stuck, and there was no way that if I pulled it, it would live, and if I pushed it back, it would live. So I won't go into it. But that was my mouse encounter yesterday. He was so cute, but he was so dumb to do that. But anyway,
do you remember there was, it might not have been there when we visited, but there was one year when we went to the taxidermy shop. You could get 2 halves of a rhinoceros.
Yes, as one does.
The bottom on one side of a wall and the front side on the other side of the wall. Maybe you should have considered that for the mouse.
I should have. Well, I didn't know how to taxidermy it, but I do buy some things from a British man who sends me videos from his kitchen of him working these birds. And it really, I don't know what it does for me. I'm odd, I know.
I think the interesting thing with me is that so little revolts me, that when I find something that I am less than happy with, I feel the need to pick away at it. Hair jewelry is one of those things. It's a little bit unsettling for me. Taxidermy is another, and that was one of the reasons why I'm kind of simultaneously fascinated and revolted by it. And I think it's because it looks so real. My brain can't get over the fact that it's not rotting. So actually having made it tells my brain that it's okay, it's just filled full of wood.
Yes. Is that what it's filled with? I don't know. I've never...
Yeah, wood and wool.
Wool. Yeah, wool. Yeah, okay. Well, yes, we have a lot of birds in our house. And people come in and they say, is that a real bird? I said, sort of. Yeah. Feathers are. Anyway, and, a lot of people are, a little turned off by it. I have to say, the Californians who've come in my house have not said, oh, that's really cool. Nobody has said that.
Oh.
That's okay. I don't care. You know what? That meter turned off long ago. If you don't like it, I don't care. I like it. So anyway, well, I think we're going to wrap up for today. And I just want to thank Grace for being with us. I don't know when we'll see you next. I hope we see you in our shop, in our house. And maybe we'll do a project together. You're coming to Blade. Is that the next time you're in the U.S.?
No.
No?
The next time in the U.S. is in 3 weeks' time.
You're coming to the Blade West show?
No. I'm just going over to Jason Knight's to teach.
Jason Knight. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. Boy, I have a soft spot for Tennessee. Let me tell you, I love Nashville. I love everything about it. That's the Las Vegas of the Southeast. but I love it. I love the music. I love the people. Follow all these people who I realized are all from Tennessee. There's something about me in Tennessee. Maybe it's in my future. I don't know. Okay, so you'll be there in 3 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, we should get together and plan something.
Yes.
I should come out and see you.
Yes, if we don't, we won't do it. So, okay, you're on. And I still want to come to Sheffield, England. You know, I grew up in a gift shop. My mother had the largest selection of antique Sheffield's silver of anywhere in the U.S. And she bought from a guy once a year who brought it over. And so my job as Cinderella was to polish all this stuff all the time. And I'm very good at polishing silver, which doesn't really come in handy these days. But so I would polish these incredibly beautiful, ornate pieces, a lot of them Victorian, that you just don't see anywhere anymore unless you're in an antique store or something like that. And so I always appreciated them. I still do. So I have to get to Sheffield. I've got to see where this all goes on.
You should do.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, Bob?
Goodbye, Grace. So nice to see you. We really look
Bye, Bob.
forward
Lovely
to
to see
seeing
you
you
too.
again.
Yeah.
You will be at the Blade Show, though? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll reach out. We'll do something. And you're getting a package in the mail. Every time I find something I think would be Grace worthy, I buy it. And so you'll be getting a package in the mail. All righty. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Grace.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody. Until next time. Thanks for
Bye-bye.
listening. Thanks for listening. If you like what you're hearing, please share this with a friend and subscribe where you listen to podcasts. Support our efforts through Patreon at TheKnifeWife, and for all Terzuola goodness, go to Terzuola.net. And remember, if you're not laughing, you're not living. Comments and questions can be made on Instagram at The KnifeWife Podcast or our Facebook group, The KnifeWife Podcast. And if you're a couple who work together and would like to be on our podcast, tell us about yourself with an email at eccentricsuz.com or terzuola.net.